Okay, first of all, I would also like to mention Daniel Kreher, who has co-authored this chapter with me and who's done a lot of the research back in Germany. So Germany, I think important it is first to understand that the planning system is very different from England. The German planning system is very defined. So while policies here, there's always room for interpretation and negotiation. In Germany, there are rules and you stick to it or you don't. And the planning system is very much dominated by lawyers as well, kind of discussing the elements which you're applying to or not. So it's a very different, very rigorous planning system. This is our case study, and I come to that in a little bit. Environmental qualities are very important in the German system as well. The protection of the environment is written into the federal law and therefore is enshrined in the highest legal levels of the country. So it is important through all the steps in planning. For example, in 1993, a law came in that requires every project to provide mitigation areas. So any area that is sealed as a result of a development needs to be offset by a water runoff area. And this applies to a little extension to your own house as well as to large urban extensions such as these. If that's not possible because of an inner urban site, you have to pay some money into a pot, and from that money they will then, for example, bring rivers back into their original state that were originally culverted, or other areas will be brought up to a higher ecological value. Environment was a key aspect for this urban extension as well. It is an urban extension that, if it is delivered in 2017, they're trying to be finished, it will have delivered 6,000 dwellings, facilities for university, technical and social infrastructure, 11 nurseries, 2 primary schools, a secondary school, 2 churches, 1 Catholic, 1 Protestant, and sports facilities. So you can see already it is all very, very fixed. I mean, development frameworks I see here, they're often not sure if there's a school or there isn't a school, and it has to change through the process. In the German system, it's fixed from the beginning. Riedberg is an example of a local authority that is being proactive. It is Frankfurt City who's proposing this, and they're being proactive in meeting their housing need. So, well, they're not only designating the land, but they're also acting as master developer. So under the German system, you're allowed to, or a local authority is allowed to designate land for development or regeneration, and then use CPO powers to acquire the land at agricultural values, and then use the increase in land value through the planning process to forward fund infrastructure, open space, and social and community uses. And that is a very common practice. The first thing which was put in here was a high-speed tram link between Riedberg and the city of Frankfurt, which means you can travel from the new quarter, which is pretty much set in landscape, to the city center of Frankfurt within 20 minutes, which makes this development highly sustainable and very attractive. The design concept, which is this one, has been embedded into a legally binding Bebauungsplan, it's called. That plan is absolute definite. It sets your building lines, your heights, your building volume, your open spaces, your uses. Often they go beyond and set building heights, and they can also kind of add quality materials and so on top of that plan. If you imagine that a development like this takes 20 years to be built out, having a plan from the first day for 20 years might be slightly unpractical. So there is movement at the moment in Germany of what is being done about this. Another infrastructure the local authority has put in is a CHP plan for the whole district, right at the beginning, so all the developments and all the future phases can be linked up to that. I talked about the mitigation areas. These are some of that. But these green fingers, they are not only mitigation areas, they're also access to the countryside, play areas, recreation areas, and contain the SAT system, and so on. The development has very clearly defined edges, as you can see at the bottom picture, because what they didn't want a development that sprawls. Although it is big and it is set on the greenfield land, it is highly contained. That is the high-speed tram link and a little bit of the city center, or well, it's not a city center, but the center for this development. Most of the buildings are 4 to 6 stories high. It's the junction between the tram line, the main roads, and the university quarter. And a lot of the ground floor uses are mixed use as well. And also bringing the university into that development ensured that there's pretty much from the start there's activity and students arrive. So it doesn't take many, many years for life to happen. The areas outside of the city center, these are some examples of the residential developments, but most of them are terrace houses or detached family houses. And you can see that although most of them are modernist, kind of contemporary, this one here looks slightly different. Riedberg is seen as a successful place for families, and it is seen as a development that really pushes the boundaries in terms of environmental design. And as you can see on these pictures, I mean, they've thought about the elderly, the families, the children, and the university students. So everybody is brought into this development pretty much from the beginning. However, it is very much of its time. It was conceived in the 90s. And nowadays in Germany, you wouldn't really develop on a greenfield land such as this. There's a very strong drive to using brownfield land as it is here. And the city of Frankfurt is now looking to meet their housing need by developing in spaces and gaps between buildings, making use of empty office blocks and barracks, and also by gaining more development land by demolishing oversized infrastructure elements. So they're really trying to look at the little kind of niches and nooks where they can develop. What I said before, that a plan like that, rigorously set down for 20 years, is slightly unpractical. And as development becomes more and more complicated, Germany starts to think of other ways of securing development and controlling development. And they're moving away from kind of highly regulated plans to a system that is more flexible, and in that sense moving closer to England. How a system with a very regulated mentality and dominated by lawyers will cope with flexibility and chaos, that remains to be seen. So yeah, we wait for that. Thank you.